So let's talk about President Biden's decision to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court, Ted Cruz's outrage, and a true story about hope. Because justice matters.
Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So I'm sure we've all heard by now that President Biden has said, at long last, an African American woman will be nominated to serve on the United States Supreme Court. I'm sure you've seen the headlines and read the stories. Biden pledges to nominate black woman to Supreme Court. And of course, this outraged Ted Cruz. Here's just one of the headlines. Cruz calls Biden's promise to nominate first black woman to Supreme Court offensive and insulting. Well, let me pose this question. What would it mean for our nation? What would it mean for our minority communities? What would it mean to women of color to have an African American woman sitting on the highest court of our land? Well, I'd like to tell a story, a true story, about a 10-year-old boy who I think provides, in part, an answer to those questions. And it's a story that I've always viewed as a story of hope. So, as many of you probably know from watching these daily Justice Matters videos, I was a career prosecutor for 30 years. 22 of those 30 years, I handled murder cases in our nation's capital, in Washington, D.C. I both tried and supervised murder cases in the courts of D.C. And needless to say, I came in contact with countless witnesses and family members of people who had been killed. And it was always difficult. It was always challenging for witnesses and certainly for family members who lost a loved one to violent crime to come to the U.S. Attorney's Office, to testify before the grand jury, to testify at a public trial about what they saw, about what they know, about what happened to their loved ones. And I had a murder case. This was many years ago. And the only eyewitness was a 10-year-old boy. We'll call him Chris. And Chris's mother, I came to learn, struggled mightily with the question of whether she should come forward to the police and tell them that her 10-year-old son had witnessed a murder. It was a murder that occurred right in front of their house. The perpetrator was a fairly well-known drug dealer in the area. Chris knew him by sight. He would see him regularly. And unfortunately, he saw this individual kill somebody during the course of a drug transaction, shoot him dead. So ultimately, Chris's mother came forward, and Chris told the police what he had seen, and Chris was brought to the U.S. Attorney's Office. I was assigned the homicide case. So I had to talk with Chris, get to know Chris, have him tell me what he saw, present him to the grand jury. And that's difficult with adult witnesses and victims. You can imagine how difficult it is for a 10-year-old boy to not only have gone through it, but then have to tell the story about it. So I met with and spoke with Chris's mom at length first. She told me a little bit about Chris. And then I had the opportunity to sit down with this young man, this boy, 10 years old. And I noticed he was dressed in a light blue polo shirt and a pair of khakis. And Chris's mom said, yeah, that's part of the school uniform that he wears when he attends school. And he was kind of medium complected. He had very close cut hair. And you couldn't help but notice that his ears sort of stuck out considerably. And so I started talking with Chris. And the last thing you want to do is jump right into, okay, tell me about this thing you saw, this horrible thing. So I spent a good bit of time trying to get to know Chris, trying to develop a relationship with him as best I could. What grade are you in? Do you like to read? Do you like to play sports? Tell me about your friends. Tell me about your teacher. And I have standard lines that I use to try to break the ice with child witnesses. And Chris told me his teacher was named Miss Jackson. I said, ooh, Miss Jackson, I've heard about her. She gives lots of homework, doesn't she? And he laughed it off. He said, no, Miss Jackson is great. In fact, he told me a story about how she would have little contests in the classroom, quizzing the students about the assignments, and people getting the answers right would get Jolly Ranchers or Tootsie Rolls. And so we talked and we talked and we talked, and we got comfortable with each other. I tried to make Chris as comfortable as I could. And then I asked him something that I ask most kids, do you have a nickname? And he kind of sat back and thought for a minute, and he said, yeah, I do have a nickname. And I said, what is it? And he sort of straightened up in his chair. And he said, my friends call me Obama. At which point it hit me. He had, the polo shirt, the khakis, medium complexion, close cut hair, ears that kind of stuck out, and he resembled a young Barack Obama. So then I had to ask the follow-up question, because kids don't always like the nicknames that their friends give them. So I asked Chris, do you like the nickname Obama? And boy, he didn't have to think on that one. He said, oh yeah, I do. So I thought, there it is. If that's not reason to hope, this handsome little 10-year-old boy, nicknamed after our first African-American president, and he's proud of it. So, yeah, when Joe Biden announces he's going to nominate the first African-American woman who will sit on the highest court in our land, the United States Supreme Court, is that a good thing? You bet it is. Because there will be, Chris's counterpart, a 10-year-old African-American girl who will be able to look up to at least one Supreme Court justice that will look like her. And she'll have that same reason for hope, right? It will inspire, it will encourage, it will breathe actual life into the phrase, anybody can be a Supreme Court justice, because there will be a concrete example that makes that true for a young African-American girl, for minority communities, for people of color, in a way that there was no concrete example before Joe Biden was determined to move us forward at least a little on the equality front. So Ted Cruz can be outraged and incensed and offended and upset and insulted, all of which is absurd. People like Ted Cruz, they only fool the gullible. I, for one, am very proud to have a president who has made this decision, because when you look at the candidates that he's considering, they could also run legal and intellectual circles around Ted Cruz. So qualifications will not be the issue. Friends, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that story. I will be back to my more routine legal analysis videos tomorrow. So for now, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.